Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, everyone. This is the Sound Health Options Show for January 19th, 2014, with Richard Olson and
Sherry Edwards. Wow. Richard, we never tell people who we are, and I would like to let people know that you're a master herbalist, you're a chef, you're a radio producer, environmentalist. The thing I love most about you, though, Richard, is that you're a rebel rouser. You've had.
I know. I like to think of myself as sort of carrying the velvet hammer, in that I'm not a shrieking chest beater. Well, I am a shrieking chest beater, but I do it in more pleasant tones, I hope.
I love your voice, and so does a lot of other people. So I apologize for mine today. I just lost it within the past couple of minutes, so I will run out and make a cup of tea as soon as we have any kind of break at all. I want to welcome you from the studios of Sound Health and the Institute of Bioacoustic Biology, our sponsor, who is a registered 501c3 nonprofit, the largest alternative research center in Ohio. Our topic today, metabolism, how to recognize metabolic syndromes and problems, and how we can overcome what these issues are manifesting within our body. Arthritis, diabetes, fatigue. How do you say our body is being, detoxification. Cancer. We're going to be talking with a doctor who's made this his lifelong journey, Dr. Kuhn, Curtis Kuhn. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. And he's going to talk to us about a metabolic program that he has put together. We'll be bringing him on just shortly. Need to tell you that the objective of our show is to share information and ideas in support of freedom, integrity, and an authentic life. We concentrate on self-help, self-responsibility. We'd like to put health back into the idea of health care. What we do centers around the sound of the voice and how those frequencies can be used as a holographic representation of the body to help with diagnostic and treatment modalities that will allow your body to support its own health from an innate perspective. We are simultaneously broadcasting from Blog Talk Radio. So any of you are seeing us now on WebEx. That number is 347-850-1407. That's for people with us on WebEx who may be having trouble with sound. We'll be having announcements, a few of them, and then we'll bring on our very special guest who's written a book called Metabolic Mission. And he's going to talk to us about how your metabolism can cause the disease, like the root cause, I guess, of disease. Simultaneously broadcasting from Blog Talk Radio, and if you want to hear that, 347-850-1407. If you want to watch the show, and mostly what we're going to do today is look at Dr. Kuhn's website and a couple of other things that we have to share with you. Thank you, announcement number one. Thank you for all the incredible feedback from the PTSD class. We're going to go ahead and organize the marketing and the hands-on course, but most of you just couldn't believe that we would do a 2-day course and give you software and textbooks and everything else for free. Folks, the reason we're doing that is somebody has to. Somebody has to step up and help this 500,000 people who have PTSD. And that's just the count of the soldiers coming back. Our next 2-day open class like that's going to be radiation, because we totally believe that radiation is destroying the cellular structure of the body. And when we bring up the keynote for today, you'll be able to see some of the relationships about that. I want to announce that we're putting together a new show for Revolution Radio. It'll be on Wednesday evenings from 10 to 12, so the people on the Pacific Coast can enjoy it. We were doing vocal profiling live every other week on our happy hour slot. We think we'll reach a different kind of audience, one that will stand on the soapboxes with us. So hope to see you there, and we will put an announcement up about what is going on. Do you have any announcements, Richard?
No. I could jump into a rant about, this ridiculous thing going on where they're trying to make it so that the GMO labeling will be, weaker so it can't occur. Just follow, just go to Facebook and look for Talk to Me Guy on Facebook, and you'll see my rant about that.
Well, we just did a rant before the show started about a girl that can't have a picture of a soldier with a gun on her shirt. And remember, we brought something to you not too long ago that a little kid brought a picture that he had colored out of a coloring book to school and got suspended for having a picture of a gun. So there's tremendous indoctrination in our schools, and don't know quite what to do about it, but I don't think we ought to take it. I think we ought to be... Well, I don't know what to say about that. You want to add anything to my lack of language here, Richard?
I have language, but I can't use it on air. I just don't know what happened to freedom of expression. Isn't that supposed to be somewhere in the Constitution? I'm perplexed by rights seem to be taken away and demands being made. It's very confusing. I thought we had a right to express ourselves until I guess we say or do something that people don't like. I don't like what people say sometimes, but I defend their right to say it.
Well, think about, even in kindergarten, they're trying to make children afraid of even a picture of a gun. I think that's indoctrination. And I think after we found out what happened a few days ago, that Obama and Hillary both knew about Benghazi and they totally lied to the people, I think we ought to go back and look at some of the vocal profiles that we've done where we said people were lying. And remember the show we did on Benghazi where we said the guy they had on 60 Minutes, he was really telling the truth? He was there by phone, he was extra security, and they really did him in, and now he's in hiding. They ought to go back and open that up again, because what we're doing with vocal profiling is outing people who are trying to lie and manipulate their way into our society. And it just has to stop. The Constitution's just being buried and stomped on. So I think we'll do a couple of shows about that. That would be wonderful. Okay, I'm going to go on to the keynote. Did you read the keynote, Richard, that I sent over?
I did. I always love the keynotes. For people who aren't familiar with the keynotes, it's a energy that is, or a frequency or a note, as Sherry would talk about it as, that is emanated by the cosmos, by the universe around us. And it's an energy that's sort of carried around 4 to 5 days at a time, and it's always mind-blowing. That's my intro to the keynote. It's always mind-blowing.
And it always relates to our guest, and we don't know how we're doing that either. So the keynote for January 20th, we try to move this ahead a day or so, is about DNA and restructuring and what's coming up by the body. These are the same frequencies that NASA is monitoring. They control the tides and other things on the planet. So ADP, adenosine diphosphate, is a nucleoside and an essential component of DNA energy for the cells. It's in activation right now. It's part of the Krebs cycle, the life energy cycle of the body's metabolism. It helps provide the animation for our life function. So without ADP, blood clotting wouldn't happen. We wouldn't have energy for muscles, cell respiration. Communication of the cells would cease, and such is the case with issues like Parkinson's, ALS, and multiple sclerosis. And we put up right before the show an article about can we cope with the rising tide of Parkinson's and looking at GMOs. Now, GMOs are destroying our ability to use glutamate and glycine. Also, the genome, when we've decoded these for Lou Gehrig's disease, is activated in the next few days. So some people may find themselves having trouble controlling muscles or swallowing. Muscles and stress, semi-membranous, which is associated with the strength and function of the hip, knee, and thigh all together as one unit. Pathogens in stress, Staphylococcus, along with a large number of coliophages, that's the type of bacteriophage. And a phage is like, I think, a virus and a bacteria. DNA components in stress, and this doesn't happen very often, the adenosine, a nucleoside, and guanine, and that's typos here, so I have to fix. Guanine is the word that's left out. Nucleic acids found in DNA. Nutrients in stress, EPA found in fish oils. Phosphate of iron, energy might be going down. Manganese, which helps make insulin, and quercetin, which we have found intimately involved in your ability to support your immune system, and particularly if that's down, you shouldn't be having vaccinations. Shouldn't have that anyway, but if they're forcing you, that's where you need to go. Medication in stress, Tylenol. So it might take more or less of anything that acetaminophen is in for it to take any kind of effect. Additional information for all of these, you can go to your wellness provider or trusted internet source. They're all done and expressed in terms of frequency equivalence, and then at the bottom of the page there, I have put on a link to a radio show I just did with Carrie Cassidy on Revolution Radio, and it's a great overview of what we do for any of our new people. That's the end of keynote. Richard, would you introduce our guest?
It would be my pleasure. The Metabolic Institute, LLC, was a company formed by Dr. Curtis R. Kuhn after 28 years of very personal experience on metabolic therapy. The core of this nutritional protocol is a science commonly known as metabolic typing. Its founder and scientific creator was Dr. William Donald Kelly, founder of the International Health Institute and co-founder of the College of Metabolic Medicine. Dr. Kelly's work has been literally decades ahead of any other nutritional program currently in the world. Dr. Kuhn discusses Kelly's work in his book, Metabolic Mission. Good morning, Dr. Kuhn.
Good morning. Good morning.
I guess I have to open, since I know a little bit about you, I have to ask the opening question of how did you get involved with metabolic typing?
Well, going back during the 70s when I got out of the Marine Corps in 1975 in the fall, and I'd had some health issues in the Marine Corps, but I got out with an honorable discharge and started going to school, and I was in and out of hospitals and clinics in 1976. They thought I had pheochromocytoma, which is cancer of the adrenal glands, and that wasn't quite pathological. So I got some biofeedback from a psychologist to try and cover my high blood pressure, which we found out a year later was caused by polycythemia. I had too many red blood cells. I couldn't get enough oxygen at the cell level. And I was going to college for broadcasting music and drama, as we were talking about earlier, and over the first 2 years. And then the third year I got into psychology, then pre-med, and I was going to try to treat myself. I'd go to hospitals and clinics, and they'd say, well, we think you have this, we think you have that, we're not sure. And it was just a vicious cycle, it really was. So I went to, I was at Martin College, and I went to Fort Hays State University here in Kansas, and then I went to Marymount College in Salina, Kansas, and I was a psychology major in pre-med. And the semester in 1981, when I graduated midterm, in my upper level anatomy and physiology class, we got to the chapter metabolism. And Dr. Zekas skipped over it. He says, we don't even study this in medical school. We don't understand it. And I said, after class, I said, Dr. Zekas, I'm planning on going to medical school next year. You're telling me that I'm not going to learn how to rebuild my body. And he laughed and said, Curtis, we're decades away from that. I said, well, I don't have decades left. I have diabetes. I had polycythemia. I had to give blood every 3 months for several years, whole blood. And, I didn't know at the time, but I had a liver dysfunction, which they diagnosed a couple years later as malignancy. So time was not on my side. And I said, Dr. Zekas, really, I don't want to learn how to treat symptoms. I want to rebuild my body. I'm a Kansas farm boy. I was very strong as a young man. And he was honest and said, Curtis, you need to keep looking. And 3 years later, I discovered Dr. Kelly. I read his book, second book, Metabolic Ecology. My wife at the time was a nurse. She worked in oncology for 3 years. She was a county health nurse when we got married. And she encouraged me to do the therapy. And that's when it all began. In February 1985, I started my first metabolic program. I went down to Dallas, and the rest has been kind of history. It's been a long journey, and my work's actually just beginning. It's 29 years now, my family and friends 29 years ago, of course, they encouraged me to do chemotherapy, and my wife told me, she said, if you want to die, go ahead, but let's don't do that. Let's go to Dallas. So I did. So I didn't have too many choices left, but it was a no-brainer for me. I mean, what happens when you quit eating food? You eventually die. So I knew that nutrition was the key to life, and growing up on a farm, I was so healthy as a young boy. Then when I moved to the city when I was 12, I started having some health problems. And, high school, I almost died of poison ivy and whooping cough one summer. I was bedridden. So my immune system was compromised at a very young age. And when I was in the Marine Corps, actually I joined the Marine Corps in 1973 to get on the Marine Corps boxing team. I coached boxing in high school, fought Golden Gloves. And I got stationed in Maine on a naval air station. I was a military policeman guarding nuclear weapons. And they didn't do boxing anymore, so I got into bodybuilding. And I made one crucial mistake back in 1974. I started taking a protein, it was a powder protein. It was just an addition to my meals, but it was a milk-based protein. And I didn't know it, but I had milk intolerance from birth. And it manifested many of the metabolic disorders I had later on in life. And, it was just a downward spiral after that, it really was.
I like your wife. I don't know anything about your wife, and I like her by the fact that she has a surly enough attitude to say, "Yeah, go ahead and do that if you want to die."
That's what
I think that's like an amazing loved one to have in your life.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, Richard, my wife, she was pretty unique, and I say she was because we're not together anymore. And I that's a long story, but she was smart, very smart lady. And it's funny because she used to laugh at me when I went to the health food store way back in 1983 and 84. And finally, when we read Dr. Kelly's book, and she read it, and she goes, "You need to do this therapy." And I said, "Wait a minute, you laugh at me when I go to the health food store." She said, "Curtis, this was 1984. There's nothing out there. Dr. Kelly is decades ahead of the whole industry. You need to follow his protocol." She said, "When I worked in oncology, if I give the wrong drug to a patient, they can die with the wrong drug when they're on chemotherapy and they're cancer patients." She said, obviously, nutrition could do more harm than good sometimes if you're not getting what your body needs. And, of course, I was convinced on that. I knew that. So she didn't have to arm wrestle me to go to Dallas. It was kind of a no-brainer at that point. And the changes I went through were they're really incredible. My first book was Metabolic Metamorphosis. not only did I rebuild my internal organs, get rid of tumors, and I had gallstones the size of golf balls I passed. I was in a semi-coma for a week when that happened. I had septic shock a year into the therapy. But the third and fourth year on the program, I went from 150 pounds, 5'9", to 5'10", 200 pounds, and I've been there ever since. It's because nothing supernatural, but I was a bodybuilder 11 years, and I could never make any gains because of my dysfunctioning, my thyroid was bad, my pituitary gland was dysfunctioning. I broke my neck when I was 17. I fell off a high bar in gymnastics my senior year of high school on my head and compressed my spine. So my lumbar was shot, and I had a hairline fracture to my C1, and pituitary gland wasn't putting out human growth hormone. So on the metabolic therapy, that gland started to function again the second and third year on the program. And we don't take human growth hormone, but we rebuild all the organs, glands, and systems, which stimulates that to grow. I never cease to be amazed at these products that they sell out there around the globe. You know, say, oh, take this is the magic bullet, blah, blah, blah. You know, if there's one magic bullet, it's pancreatic enzymes to break down malignancy. You know, without enzymes, you can't break down any of your foods. You know, protease, amylase, lipase, break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and trypsin and chymotrypsin for malignancy, for tumors. So, you know, this is all research that Dr. Kelly did for 50 years, but it was done 50 years before he delved into it. You know, it's a long history there, over 100 years.
I had some familiarity with Kelly's work because in the early 80s, I was doing massage therapy for a chiropractor who did the Kelly protocol, with his patients. And so one of the things, I have two things to say. The most amazing intake I've ever seen in my life. There are a bazillion questions in the intake. It is the most, I thought a homeopathic intake was intense. This is an amazing intake of data. It is just mind-numbing. It's like I've read books that are 1,000 pages shorter than this. It is amazing amounts of data. There's that. That's just an observation. And then the other thing is, could you tell us something about, the sort of foundational concept of metabolic typing? Because that's such a powerful, that really is the powerful tool of Kelly's work.
It is. It's based on the autonomic nervous system. There's two major branches, but actually there's three divisions. There's the parasympathetic, which is the carnivorous genetically. They're the meat eaters, The sympathetic dominants, of course, are the vegetarians and very left brain analytical logical types, and those are the middle of the balanced types. So he utilized the autonomic nervous system when he started designing the metabolic types back in the early 60s, after he had treated himself, for pancreatic and liver cancer. And so he came up with the concept of the typing, which is very, very effective. I worked on my dissertation 23 years on a new theory of personality based on Dr. Kelly's metabolic typing. It's really an extension of Dr. Sheldon's theory of somatotyping back in the 40s, Dr. William Sheldon. But it takes it to the bio. It's really quite amazing. I just kind of regurgitated all of Dr. Kelly's work, but I'm a poster child for his program. Because when I started the therapy, I was 5'9", 150. I looked like a sympathetic dominant, but I'm genetically a type 5. I'm parasympathetic. I had blown out that whole mode of the sympathetic mode of the autonomic nervous system. I was functioning, I'd blown out the parasympathetic, and I was functioning as a sympathetic. And, I was in the insurance industry at the time. I'd lost all my creative abilities. Of course, as we were talking about earlier, I used to kind of talk like this because I couldn't assimilate calcium, and I had a milk intolerance. I had a hormone imbalance, so I had a lot of problems. But one of the reasons, I just wanted to get my life back, but I was praying eventually someday I'd get my voice back, too, because I always wanted to sing professionally, which I've been doing now, for the last 25 years. So I had a lot of dreams, and I knew that if I could rebuild my body chemistry and realign it and rebalance it, that everything else would come, kind of like Field of Dreams. Build it, and they will come. And that's exactly what happened. And the body rebuilds from the inside out and the top down. And I'm a poster child for that because my brain and central nervous system the first year kicked in. I was studying for different licenses and insurance, and on weekends I was driving to Dallas and studying metabolic science because I was so fascinated with what I was going through. And it was cool because I was not only studying the science, but I was living it. So every class that every symposium we had on the weekends, I would stand up and shout, "Hey, I'm going through that right now." It's amazing. So, I lived it, and I still live it. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here anyway. So, to me, what else is there? But a lot of people, sometimes it's kind of like a horse. You lead them to water. Sometimes they drink. It's up to them. So I never cease to be amazed at people that come to me, and some of them are like, "Oh, yeah, I take to it like a duck to water. Oh, it's simple." And other people fight it. Well, I don't know if I can eat that. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know. It does take some discipline. But, after even the first couple of months, it's really this routine. It's just, you just change your behavior, and you follow the protocol. It's really quite simple. It really is.
Well, I think the part that amazed me when I first watched this chiropractor work with these patients was that, as you say, at first, and I have to say, and I, flash back in the Wayback Machine. This was in the 80s. What you're saying now about, rebuild it and they will come sort of theory of, rebuilding the foundation of the body and making it stronger seems kind of radical in the idea of, this is, I always like to say, in my opinion, seems like a radical concept in Western medicine's school of thinking, in general now. And this was in the early 80s that that he was working with people nutritionally. And at the time I had some, background because I'd already gotten a degree as a master herbalist. But even so, it was way back then, it was like, wow, what an idea. And now it still seems like, wow, what an idea. So it's just so amazing that Kelly was out of the gate so early with this information. It's just amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and that was back in the 60s when he came up with the concepts when he was sick, back in 63. And he'd been working, he was an orthodontist, he'd been working with many of his patients several years earlier with just nutrition, changing their diet and, alleviating sugar from their diet for their teeth and seeing remarkable things, It's really, at first glance, people are like, wow, this is kind of hard to understand, but really, I try to keep it simple with people. It's basically changing your diet, adding supplements to your diet to fill in the gaps and help assimilate and catabolize, break down your foods, and then detoxification. They give you the tools to cleanse the liver, the blood, the kidneys, the lymphatic system, and the colon. And then the balancing act comes into play, and homeostasis is always a priority. So, and given the right tools, your body can do amazing things. I'll be the first to shout. I should have died 28 years ago when I was in that semi-coma for a week, Hey, I was real. You pass gallstones the size of golf balls, and it's going to have an effect. I had a bacterial infection that was passed from my gallbladder, and it shut down my white blood cells, so they dropped dramatically. But I lived through it, and it took about 3 months before I really got back on my feet, strength-wise. But, I went back to work a week later, and I had enough strength to walk and talk, and that's all I had to do with my job back then. So, and that's when when I came out of that, the first 2 days, I felt like I was in a deep freeze. I was completely under it. And I came to, and I said, Lord, just let me die. I'm ready to go. Well, he wouldn't take me. So I went back under for another day and a half, and I came back, and I had a little bit of energy to actually get up and go to the bathroom and crawl and get me some carrot juice. I said, all right, if I'm not going to die, then I want two things. Please, give me back my body. It's down to about 140 pounds, and give me back my voice. I always wanted to sing professionally. I always wanted to work in radio, But when you talk like this on the radio, it just don't sound so good, And I had some basic human needs that I was in it for, but I had no idea that I'd get so much strength that I'd go to Vegas and become a private investigator and sing professionally in the show for years. And I had no idea that was going to happen to me, but it gave me a second chance. I've had a second chance, so I did the things I dreamed about as a kid. I always wanted to sing, I always wanted to work in radio. I had my own radio show in Vegas, which I may start again here in the Midwest this year. So it's I've been given a second chance, and I went through the metamorphosis aspect, and then I became I started a mission, and I'm on a mission now, and that's truly what it is. Just to share the truth. I'm teaching doctors in other countries on Skype now, metabolic science, and we're in the Middle East. We're getting ready to maybe teach many doctors, and here in the United States, and I have a clinical nutritionist I'm working with, and I've had a couple others. So, I want to fulfill Dr. Kelly's dream of reaching the world, not only with helping clients, but teaching others to share the science too. Very important.
It is really amazing when I flash back to those times to now that, I mean, what you're doing is carrying on Kelly's work, which is so powerful. And
yes.
It's not, I mean, the intake is, as I say, mind-blowing. I've actually held the intake in my hand, and it's mind-blowing. I'm telling you, people. It is like, wow. But to be able to take...
Is that what we're looking at online, Richard? Is that what we're looking at online? Self-test?
That is, that's the self-test book, yes.
Okay.
Richard, I hate to interrupt you, but I want to expound on that just for a moment. When I took his first questionnaire back in 1984, late, like December 84, I started working on it. It was 3,200 questions. It took me like 20 hours to fill that thing out. It was crazy. Well, over the last 25 years, he narrowed it down to about 400 questions, which still takes 3 or 4 hours. And people even cry about that. Oh, it's so long. I'm like, you don't even have a clue, man. It used to be 3,200 questions. But we live in a fast food society in America. And people wake up in the morning, I got to go to the doctor. I think I got to do some tests. Well, you've got cancer. Oh, Lord, it just happened. No, it didn't. It took 2 or 3 years to develop. The signs were there. All the warning signs were there. You just didn't look. You just weren't taking heed, So things take time. But then they're diagnosed and they want, well, can you give me a pill and I'll go back to work tomorrow? Okay, well, maybe not quite that simple. You might have to make some lifestyle changes, but they will last a lifetime. They really will. So, and you know that, Richard. Gosh, you know a lot about this. I appreciate it.
I did a lot of massage with this doctor, chiropractor, and a number of the people that I did physical therapy on, were people who were on the Kelly protocol. And it was funny because I hadn't thought about this till I started reading your material, that I would work on them, and there would be a sort of like, in the early stages, a lot of what I would call whining. And it's about you have to do this, and you have to do that, and it's so many supplements, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, and it's so, like, whiny and miserable and tough and hard. It's so hard. I'm thinking, and once I got to know some of these people, it was like, how do you feel about dying? Do you think that's hard? I mean, how do you, what's your other choice? I mean, and he had a lot of turnarounds with patients. I mean, massively,
right.
From pancreatic to colon to, all sorts of, cancers and other conditions, not just cancer, but, a lot of turnarounds in a very positive way. And once people got into the lifestyle, and it's not like you have to wear, different clothing or wear pink all the time or something. It's not that. It's just it's a different way of thinking about food and nutrition as, sustaining the body, building the body, making the body stronger. I mean, it was, as I say, it was so radical then, and it still sounds kind of radical now, but it's amazing.
Well, of course, today we're inundated by pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, nitrates, GMOs. Oh, the list goes on and on and on. It's crazy. And people are starting to finally come out of taking their head out of the sand like an ostrich and say, hey, I think food has something to do with my health. Hey, good idea. Good idea. When I do seminars, I keep it down. I keep it at basics. I ask people, all right, first question, what happens when you quit eating food? Not a trick question. And people, it takes a couple of minutes. People finally, you'll die. Yeah, there you go. How long does it take? You'll get all kind of answers. A couple of weeks, a month, about 60 days, give or take, maybe 10 days either direction, depending on many variables. All right, number 2, what happens when you quit drinking water? Oh, you're going to die. How long is that going to take? Well, if you're in Vegas at 118 degrees, not very long. But under great conditions, about a week. Okay, what happens when you quit breathing air? Oh, you're going to die. That's going to be a few minutes. It doesn't take long at all. So we've established 3 concrete statements here. Food, water, and air are the essence of life. Well, today we're going to talk about the quality of the food, water, and air that we're ingesting on a daily basis. Must have something to do with the quality of life, right? Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. I try to bring it down to basics and build from that. And that's what Dr. Kelly did, really. And that's how he taught it. He's like, hey, pancreatic enzymes are the key to life. If you can't break down your food, and of every client I've had the last 28 years, it all begins with metabolism. I can't break this down. I can't digest that. I have allergies. I mean, of course you do. You just have mineral imbalances. If you can't break down the food, I have a lot of old sayings. If it don't break down, I guarantee you it's going to stick around. Trust me, it's going to stay in the upper or lower GI tract. And 30 years later, you're going to pass it out when you do Dr. Jensen's 7-day cleanse. So, the body holds on to a lot of junk. We got to get rid of that junk as we're rebuilding every organ, gland, and system, in your body. And it's a process. It takes time. I always ask, I remember when I had my first clinic here in Kansas in 89, I was with a homeopathic doctor, Dr. Byard. He was just a great guy. But I get a 60-year-old prostate cancer. Fine. That's metastasizing to bone cancer. Pretty tough. I'd say, well, Jim, how old are you? Well, I'm 60. Well, how long did it take you to get there? What do you mean? That's a funny question. I go, well, how long did it take? 60 years. All right. Well, I'm not telling you it's going to take 60 years to rebuild your body. It might take more than a week or two. But you think, oh, I see what you're saying. It's like, I just want to paint a picture here and give you an overview that, hey, it took time for this to develop. When did you start having gas on the upper lower GI tract? And they think for a moment. Oh, about 4 years ago. 5 years. Oh, okay. When does your vision start to change? Oh, a couple of years ago. How about your hair? When did it start graying, or when did it change texture? Well, that was happening about 3 years ago. And all these things start to come together like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. And so those are the things. That's why Dr. Kelly's 7 warning signs of cancer on my website, they are the true warning signs that he went through when he had cancer way back in the 60s, too. So they're tried and true. Most of my clients that have cancer, they can validate that. I could myself. My gosh, I was 30 when I started the therapy. My hair was graying. I had to wear glasses. I haven't worn glasses now for like 27 years, 26. So, it's everything was slowly falling apart because I wasn't getting what I needed at the cell level.
It really is amazing.
Really,
it's almost like the byline of, the Kelly work, your work is, given the opportunity, the body will heal itself. And so your protocol and the work really leads the body toward having that opportunity. I mean, it's like an amazing concept.
It is. And he, and there again, he lived it and invented it. Now, that's another thing. That's a whole other topic. But when we're talking about, who's the founder of metabolic typing, well, it's Dr. Kelly. I'm here to shout. And I hear other companies say, oh, we came up with this concept in the 80s and the 90s. No, you didn't, And then I see other, I talk with people, I have a new way to do a gallbladder flush. This is what my chiropractor recommended. And it takes Dr. Kelly's original and it adds things, subtracts things. I'm like, you know what? I'm 59. I'm old school. I'm an old Kansas farm boy, and I still got a flip phone. I don't do the smartphone thing. But, I'm just kind of set in some of my ways, but I follow what Dr. Kelly taught me 29 years ago because it works. Why should I change it? Now, one thing he did do, which is incredible, over the last 20 years, he took the metabolic formulations for the 12 metabolic types and combined different elements so you'd have to take far less supplements when you take them. And that's the genius of the man, and they're even less expensive today than they were 30 years ago. So I just think it's amazing what he's done over the years. He really did. You have to see his manual, his last manual he put together that I used to teach to the doctors. It's incredible. Just incredible, some of the information he compiled over a lifetime, And I guess, Richard, you know that from what you've seen, too. So it's amazing.
It's amazing. Can you say a little bit more? I know we've talked a bit about it, about the metabolic types. Could you talk a little bit more about the characteristics of the parasympathetic? I know there are categories within each, but if you could talk just a bit more, sort of paint out a picture of the parasympathetic type versus the sympathetic type?
Sure, absolutely. I'm a prime example. I'm a parasympathetic. I'm a type 5. Not the most extreme, but the next level under. So parasympathetics are very right brain dominant, creative, gregarious. Not that I am at all. Joke there. I sometimes my creative mind takes over, and I say stuff like my girlfriend says, "Kurt, where do you come up with this stuff?" I said, "It's my brain, man. It works overtime sometimes." But they're very creative, gregarious, very slow to anger. But of course, they're heavier set. The men have large barrel chests. They're the bodybuilders. They live on high proteins, high fats, low carbohydrates. You give a parasympathetic meat and potatoes, and they'll lose weight, because they can follow an Atkins protocol, the Atkins diet. It's very similar to what the parasympathetics need in Dr. Kelly's paradigm. Whereas the sympathetic dominants are very linear, vegetarians, left brain, analytical, logical. Get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, run 10 miles. By 9 o'clock at night, they're ready to zonk out. The parasympathetics stay up till 3 in the morning, eat pizza and drink beer and watch television. They want to sleep till noon. And that's the extremes, of course. And then the balance type in the middle kind of have equal access. They have even their body is not totally parasympathetic or sympathetic. They're balanced in the middle. And they have equal access to the most foods. It's kind of the best of both worlds, really. And I've been through all those, because when I rebuilt my body, I looked like a sympathetic, and I was functioning. I was a type 3. Actually, Dr. Kelly told me our type 4s usually have cancer, and I was a type 3. He said, "You're too sick to have cancer." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, yeah, your blood work, everything indicates malignancy of the liver, gallbladder, but you have worse problems." I said, "What's worse than cancer of the liver? Are you kidding me, Doc?" He said, "Well, Curtis, you have 50 to 70 trillion cells in your body. Each one's like a miniature trash can. And your trash has nowhere to go. It's overflowing." I thought for a moment. I looked at my wife, and I said, "Wow, when I go to the gym, I can't even sweat anymore. I have no oil in my skin." Of course, I didn't know it, but I'd had my gallbladder been x-rayed several times over the last decade, and they always said, "Oh, you don't have any gallstones." Well, I passed gallstones the size of golf balls. My next gallbladder flush, and there were like 7 of them, 7 or 8, and I got kind of sick from that. But the next time I passed them, I went into a semi-coma. So I had all this junk, and they were white. They were white stones. So I guess when they X-rayed those, they couldn't see them because they were white. They were theories. I don't know. They never saw them. They could never see them. So, I was so toxic. I would just, oh my golly, that first year on the program, my sweat was just horrendous, and I do my detox with coffee, and even my wife said, "Man, so it smells like you're going to die." I go, "Well, I'm not dead yet, but I don't know." So, you go through a lot of changes as your body's expelling all this metabolic debris at different levels, the cell level, and higher levels, the endocrine, the exocrine system, everything is affected. Now, I lived in Mylanta in the Marine Corps from 1975 to 1985 when I started Dr. Kelly's program. I had ulcers. I lived on a Mylanta.
Wow.
I had flux, and I got rid of all that junk. I can eat the hottest jalapeno on the planet. Now, so those are things that I appreciate, just to be able to eat normally. But, when I was in high school, nothing functioned very well for me. My bladder never would empty. My colon was, sluggish for weeks at a time. It was terrible. Everything was slow on me. And so the program helped me to function normally again. And I had people ask me, "Well, how long did it take you before you really adapted to doing that coffee enema?" I said, "The first day, man, it was incredible. It was just incredible. My colon started to function like in the first year." So, it's just each individual has their own. I've got a client right now. She has breast cancer in Missouri, and her husband, God bless him, he's helping her go through the program because she was fighting it at first, and now it's starting to work, and it's easier for him. He used to call me every day, "Curtis, what do I do?" I said, "Just stay with it, man. Stay with it. She's getting there. She's getting it, and she finally is. She's starting to adapt to it." So each individual's different. You just never know. You can never read people sometimes and what they're going to take to it, like a duck to water or not. You never know.
And can our type, I know we come in genetically inclined toward a type, or that's my feeling.
Yeah.
That we come inclined.
Absolutely.
Now, can environmental factors affect that type?
Oh, absolutely. You'll shift types through a lifetime. And, when I came back to Kansas, my home state, 4 years ago from Las Vegas, I love the desert. It's pristine. I got Lyme's disease in 1990. I got bit by a tick, and I was at 104 temperature that night. It's in the middle of summer. I'm like, oh, Lord, what have I got? I called Dr. Kelly. He goes, well, just, stay on your program, bone up on your phosphoric acid, but that spirochete organism, it's a large bacteria. It's going to settle in your joints probably, and it did on my left arm. I moved to the desert in 94, and I just thrived for 17 years, I came back here, and they were spraying these wheat fields, after harvest. And
yipes.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I thought, what's going on, man? My head was hurting. I never get headaches. I haven't had headaches in 27 years. And I got a headache, and my sinuses. I'm like, oh, man, I was driving right through the country next to a field they were spraying. And so, your body, when it's exposed to certain elements, no matter how long you've been functioning very well, you rebuild it. It's going to when it's exposed to something, it's going to let you know real quick. So, and if it's a prolonged amount of time, your metabolic type can actually shift. But yes, you're born with a genetic metabolic type. I'm born parasympathetic. The first 4 years on the program, I shifted like 4 times. I was functioning, I was a type 3, then I went to type 7, then I went back over to 5, and then I was at 10 for several years, I'm back at 5. So, you'll shift as you're rebuilding. And that's the nature of the process. It's your system, the human body is more amazing than we ever get credit. It will. As the system blows out, another system will take over. Let me tell you, Richard, when I was in undergraduate school at Marymount, I worked on a cadaver for a year, dissecting different organs and so forth. And I was in the muscles back then, on the box over. But we had a guy as a farmer. He's like 6'5", 270 pounds, huge guy. He was like 65. He died of a massive coronary. We opened him up, and we had the whole class in there, and his liver was huge. But it was all gray except for the spot about the stroma cells, about the size of a quarter. And Dr. Zicke said, look at this class. Look at this guy's liver. It looks like 95% of this liver wasn't functioning, but there was a small area the size of a quarter that was. That man his liver was still functioning. Kept him alive. But he died of a massive coronary, But obviously, the liver being backed up like that put pressure on the heart and everything else too. Everything's connected. It's a domino effect. Everything's connected.
It is really amazing. Now I know we come in as genetically as either a parasympathetic or sympathetic, and do we tend to just stay within those and within the scale of that, or can we actually switch from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic?
Both. I've seen people, I have a friend that reminds me of a girl I dated 43 years ago when I was in 9th grade. So it's just like her, only 43 years older. But Marla Hamilton. And I ran back into that girl back in 2007 or 8. She looked exactly like she did when she was in junior high school. I mean, she's like 5'1", 105 pounds. The same. I'm like, wow, amazing. But her whole family is like that. I know her parents. I've known them for 43 years. Her brothers, her sisters. They all have incredible metabolism. So they stayed the same type. And they didn't go through too much stress in their life. They were upper middle class. So you see these things in people. And then you see someone else. Like, for instance, my best friend, Don Zimmerman, who was, I wrote about him in my book. He was... I hadn't seen him since 1979 when he got out of the Navy. He was at the end of Vietnam, and I'd already been out of the Marine Corps in 75, but we were good friends in high school. We ran into each other. He was 6'4", 275 pounds. Okay, he moved to Oregon the next year, and I moved to LA for a while, and I came back, and he was up in Oregon. I didn't see him until 1988, so 9 years. I was in a bar back in my hometown of Grapeland, Kansas, and all the Saturday afternoon, the place was packed. I hear this big old voice. It sounded just like Zimmerman's. I looked over, and I see this guy is 6'4", but he's 425 pounds, and he's bald. I'm like, wow, that voice sounds familiar. I don't know who that guy is. And my buddy goes, that's Don Zimmerman. And I go, no, that's not Z. He's aged 25 years in 9 years. You're kidding me. And so I got his attention. He came over, and I said, Z. He looked at me and goes, Curtis, you look fantastic, man. What are you doing? And I started to explain. I said, you look terrible. What are you doing? So, he had flipped ice completely. He had blown out. Oh man, he was just. Well, he painted ships when he was in the Navy. He was on an aircraft carrier, and his job was to paint. That's all he did all year long, was paint below deck there, And it was lead-based paint. He had lead poisoning, disrupted his enzymes, so he's putting on all this weight. And I got him on a program. He dropped 150 pounds the first 6 months, So, it's just a matter of what you're exposed to, where you're at, environmental, things you're exposed to in your family when you grow up, I mean, we live in a country where, oh my goodness, bulimia, anorexia, and all these ways we react to psychological things in our life. Of course, I'm a psychologist first, so that's, I've been asked, Curtis, why don't you just go into clinical psychology? Why don't you counsel people? I'm like, I'd rather not put a Band-Aid on an amputation. I'd rather expose them to Dr. Kelly's therapy and rebuild from the inside out, and from the bottom up. It's just, I just can't. Counseling is a small piece of a big puzzle when it comes to our biochemistry. It really is.
Well, I'm always amazed with. I had worked. Well, as an herbalist, I've worked in that arena for a long time, and it always amazes me when you're working with somebody, or one is trying to work with somebody who has a mental thing that they're seeing somebody that they're talking about, and they're coming in and talking to you, and they're drinking a Diet Coke or smoking a cigarette or eating a piece of pizza, or and I'm not I am opposed to 2 out of those 3. Doing things, and there's no thought about the foundation of giving the body the nutrition. What good is this? Is again, in my opinion, what is the good of doing mental therapy if you're not supporting the physical body with nutrition so that everything kind of bumps into each other correctly? It's an amazing thing to me.
It is. In fact, when I was sick all those years, let me tell you, I was mentally sick. I was so depressed. I went through depression the last 3 years before I met Dr. Kelly. I was like, oh Lord, am I ever going to pull out of this? But I was so toxic too. I mean, good grief, people are so toxic. They live in a toxic world. I mean, way back in '76, they thought I had pheochromocytoma. That's cancer of the adrenal gland, and which was very, very unusual back then. You never heard of that. Well, now you see it all the time. Why? We live on caffeine, nicotine, stimulants. We live in a stimulating society, and we condone it. Like, oh yeah, they've got these power drinks and this and that, Red Bull, and I'm not saying the names, but there's so much stuff out there that we make available. You can get anything you want if you want to stimulate your adrenals.
It is really amazing that we're, and actually I think about this class that Sherry taught just, I think now a couple of weeks ago on post-traumatic stress disorder using the software, the vocal profiling software. And one of the people in the class was a soldier for 12 years, and she talked about, loosely, the fact that, every time they came back from a mission, they could be injected or given something, or, and because you're in the military, it's not a, would you like this? It's a, take this shot is being given to you now. And, I mean, it's mind-blowing the amount of exposure soldiers have. I mean, what they're given, let alone the toxic environments they're in, like your friend who was painting using lead-based paint to paint ships. I mean, the amount of stuff that's out there. I grew up in the Salinas Valley, so I was regularly exposed probably to like DDT. I remember driving through the Salinas Valley, not me driving, but in the back of the car, the classic scene out of a movie, except for the barking dog. Head out of the car, driving through the Salinas Valley on a hot summer day, having the crop dusters fly overhead, getting dusted with, in the 70s, in the 60s, actually in the 60s, probably DDT. Without a thought. It was like, wow, look, the plane, cool, boosh. So, I mean, we are just exposed to so many things that it's just amazing.
It is. It's amazing our bodies halfway function, But as you know, I mean, socially, we're seeing erratic behavior just escalating every year, worse and worse. Just crazy stuff. People shooting people for who knows the reason. It's just gotten crazy. But that's kind of been foretold a long time ago.
Yeah. And I guess I see us coming. I'm surprised to see us coming toward the end. But where can people get a hold of you? Where can they get your book? Where can they read more about you?
My website is the easiest way. It's pretty simple. It's www.the, the first word is the or the, depending where you're from. Just THE, the Metabolics, just like it sounds, METABOLIC, TheMetabolicinstitute.com. It's my website, and it gives you an overview of metabolic typing, the science behind it. I've got several testimonies over the years. I have several I need to add of other cancer clients that are cancer-free. And I've got some incredible stories of people I need to start putting more on, I guess. I just had a guy call me just about 3 days ago, had colon cancer, 4th stage. And, I said, well, look at my website, and he wanted to talk to some of my clients. And I said, well, if you want to, you can. I'll have to talk to them first. It's kind of a privacy issue there. But he decided not to do it. I'm like, well, good luck. I think there's so much information out there now. People are overwhelmed also. There's so many choices, they don't know what to do. And that's kind of sad. When I started the program, there were no choices. 29 years ago, I found Dr. Kelly, and I wasn't by chance. I was in a little bookstore in Arkansas City, Kansas, and the only reason I even found his book was because he grew up there. He actually grew up in Winfield, where I was living, 10 miles away. But the lady in the health food store saw me looking at his book, Metabolic Ecology, and she said, you need to buy that book. And I said, really? She goes, yes, I went to grade school with Dr. Kelly. He's a genius. And do you have health problems? And I started to tell her. She goes, oh, Lord, you need to read this. So I did. And the rest is history. And what are the chances of me being there, at that one little bitty health food store in Ark City, a city of like 8,000 people, 7,000. It was the answer for me. I've been looking for a decade, and I finally found it. And, now his last book, Cancer Curing the Incurable, which is on my website, where we're getting ready for the next edition right now. And, it's just amazing. And, of course, Dr. Kelly passed in 2005. He was 79. His old heart finally gave out on him. He'd been through so much in his life. He had polio as a child, pancreatic and liver cancer in his 30s, and he'd been through so many things, yet he still lived all those years. I thought that was amazing in itself. But it's funny. You pass away and you become a saint. It's just he's getting all the notoriety he should have got during his life. I guess that's the nature of humanity.
That does seem to be.
Yeah.
I know we're moving toward the close, so I want to ask you if there were 3 things that you could suggest to people that they do aside from doing metabolic typing. Do you have 3 suggestions that you think would be, lead people toward having a stronger foundation in their health?
Well, number 1, clean up your water source. About 70 to 80% of the body is water. And there's some great water filtration systems out there. It's funny, of course, we always incorporate the water. I have a corporate sponsor on my website that Aqualive. They have incredible alkalinizing water filtration systems. So we know the body needs to be more alkaline to rebuild. So give a filtration system, but don't use RO. Don't take all the minerals out. I've been preaching that for the last 29 years. I've met all these different people that work for companies that sold the RO. And you start taking everything out of the water, and it starts chelating minerals out of your body after you start drinking this for a few years. So that's not good. But the water source is a big problem. It has been for the last 75 years. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And, of course, your diet. If you go to the store, just read labels a little bit. If you can't pronounce it, don't buy it, man. If it don't break down, it's going to stick around. So you better clean that up. And of course, if there was a magic bullet, pancreatic enzymes are the key. Dr. Kelly makes the strongest in the world. They are stronger than any other enzyme on the planet. That's what he's known for. So pancreatic enzymes help you break down everything you eat. Proteins, fats, carbohydrates. That's where it all begins. If it don't break down, you're in trouble. It's not going to assimilate. You won't be able to utilize it. So the list goes on and on and on. So, try to eat real foods, like we did 50 years ago even, fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds. Meats are good, try to get away from the steroids and growth hormones and antibiotics, which big controversy with that as we speak. It's been going on for 30 years. So they're starting to clean up the sources. But, of course, now, as you know, Richard, I've got friends, I've got relatives, everybody I know got this bug that's been running around, trying to kill people, and it actually is killing some people. So the bugs are mutating. The bacteria are mutating as we speak in the viral world too, and almost like they're combining. I don't know how that can happen, but things are getting worse at the microscopic level. So keep your body clean. There again, detoxification. That's something that's a pretty big priority too, for sure.
I think that's a great list. I'll add my personal caveat on diet. I'm of the school, as much as possible, I try and have foods that don't have labels. That's sort of my thought about that. I just try and eat things that I can go to either the farmer's market. I'm fortunately in California, so I can go to the farmer's market even during the winter months and get produce. And I love meeting the people that are growing my food. It's like, wow. Actually like, oh my God, you picked that this morning. How awesome is that? I try to just, as I say, not eat things with labels. Because it's so much easier to understand. Yeah. Oh, this is celery.
Well,
okay,
right.
I know what that is.
Right, you're right. Yeah.
Of course, knowing what it's sprayed with and if it's been altered is a separate conversation.
Well, and that's what my clients, if they can't afford organic, we have things that Dr. Kelly taught us. For instance, if you get all your produce at the grocery store, it's commercial, there's still ways to clean it up. Throw all your vegetables in the sink of water, add a cup of apple cider vinegar for 30 minutes, then rinse it off, and pull off some of the chemicals there. So I think there are things you can do. But, of course, the key is if you can stick to just forget about stuff in a can and all things like that. Keep it simple. Keep it simple like we have for the last 10,000 years. It's been only the last 30, 40 years we've really complicated the food chain, and it's crazy. Crazy stuff.
It is crazy. Well, Dr. Kuhn, it's been great. I know we could go on for a lot longer, especially now that I know that you've done radio. You could, easily, as I can, obviously, we could go on for quite some time. But I think we may have to have you back and talk more about it.
My girlfriend calls me a big mouth. You never shut up, Curtis. I go, well, I got all this information. I'm like an encyclopedia, man. I got to share it.
That's why people told me I should do radio. They were tired of hearing about it. Go out.
Yeah, this is good.
As we were talking, I was monitoring Amazon, and our people are very money conscious too. A lot of them don't have it.
Go ahead, Sherry.
And his book is flying off the shelves. The used copies are just flying off the shelves here at Amazon. So people have recognized that you're a true, honest, helping, caring person, and I feel that about you also. So
thank you.
Totally appreciate you being on the show. Certainly have you back.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. As my boss told me when I was a private investigator, it was kind of overwhelming sometimes. I said, Jimmy, what's the bottom line for being a PI? He said, Curtis, it's very simple. It's 3 words. Tell the truth. Document the truth. I'm like, okay. So that's what I try to do with Dr. Kelly's work. Just share the truth.
That's a great
my
thing.
Job.
That's my job. I love that. Thanks again, Dr. Kuhn, and thank you, Sherry. Everybody have an excellent weekend. I hope it warms up for all of you, and I hope it rains in California sometime soon. That would be
really?
my envision.
Sure.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Take care. Goodbye.